We start with Tijana Kovčić, who is an archivist at the Historical Archives of Belgrade since 2011 and has been involved in many projects processing archival material, preparing exhibitions and conducting research. She is in charge of the fonts and archival material related to the Second World War and post-war period. Her research on the Holocaust and Jews has resulted in numerous publications and exhibitions, as well as the database of victims of Nazi concentration camps from Belgrade. She was the coordinator of the project Jewish Digital Collection, a 3-year-long project which gathered in one place all Jewish-related documents preserved in the archives of Belgrade and presented them in an online database. Tijana was also one of the coordinators for Serbia for the Jerusha project. So Tijana.
Hello everybody. As Amalia said, I am Tijana, senior archivist from the Historical Archives of Belgrade, and today I am going to present you a project we are very proud of, Jewish Digital Collection. But first, let me just tell you a few words about this institution I come from. It's the Historical Archives of Belgrade, which was founded in 1945 by the Belgrade City Council, and the main task was to collect documentation created by the local government. But we also collect documentation from all institutions that operate on the territory of Belgrade, like schools, banks, companies, citizens associations, and we today preserve more than 2,700 fonts and collections that occupy more than 13 kilometers of space in our archival repositories. I can say that the documentation preserved in the archives can provide very detailed, very specific picture of historical events that occurred in the Serbian capital, and detailed information on Belgrade citizens, therefore also on Jewish citizens who lived in Belgrade. Jewish community has been living in Belgrade for centuries, and according to the documentation that we collected, they actively participated in political, economical, social life. It was all interrupted, of course, by the Second World War. In only 2 years, 1941 and 42, the whole community disappeared. Out of 12,000 citizens, only 1,000 survived the Holocaust. In 2018, a group of archivists, including myself, we initiated a vast research which resulted in Jewish Digital Collection. In this research, we physically opened more than 30,000 archival boxes. We looked at each paper in these boxes, and when we determined that the document was related to the Jewish community, we scanned it, we analytically described it, and those descriptions were translated into English. And after 3 years of work, including COVID-19 lockdown, we created, I can say, unique online database called the Jewish Digital Collection that gathers in one place all documentation related to Jewish community that is preserved in our archives. The oldest document is from 1751, and the most recent one is from 1950s. We gathered in one place more than 60,000 archival records, more than 100,000 digitized pages, and from different 60 different fonts and collections. And what is, I think, also unique about this collection is that it is searchable in English and in Serbian, and you don't have to be registered to use it. Just to show you how the variety of the documents preserved in this, gathered in this collection, I chose only few. I think this one is historically important because this is a list of family members of Simon Herzl. Simon Herzl was grandfather of Theodor Herzl, father of the modern movement of Zionism. And Theodor Herzl is listed in this register, but it is written that at the time when the list was compiled, he was already living in Vienna. However, he did live and spent his childhood in Zemun, today part of Belgrade. We also gathered in one place 20,000 citizens' cards. Those are actually certificates of permanent residence, because every Belgrade citizen had to be registered by the police. These are the how those cards looked like. I chose two to show you. First is Samuilo de Maio. He was famous Belgrade attorney before the Second World War. And the other one is Geca Kon, probably the best known Jewish citizen even today in Serbia. And he was the most famous publisher in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. I think maybe even the first Jewish citizen arrested after the Nazi occupation. These certificates are very important because they give all important personal information on each citizen and on his closest family. Also very interesting documentation we found within the Association of Merchants, because before the Second World War, many Jewish citizens were merchants or assistant merchants. If they wanted to practice this profession, they had to apply for the work permit and they had to submit their photo. This is how we have preserved photos of the Jews who were killed in the Holocaust. This is just the example how those applications looked like. And I really, really like this one, Lela Hara, one of my favorite photos. Also very interesting, we gathered in one place all technical documentation, all architectural designs of buildings in Belgrade that were owned by Jewish citizens before the war, or were built by Jewish architects. Just to show you a little bit of the statistics, these are the visits from the February this year. We had 380 visits, and I think it's interesting to see what countries where the IP addresses that visited the website are registered. Of course, most of them are for Serbia, but we also have United States, Brazil, France, 5 visits from Taiwan, for example. And that's the shortest way that I can tell you something about this collection. And now I would like to show you how you can search it. I will try to do it online because from now on my internet is okay. So this database can be, I already said, it can be searched in English and in Serbian. You can search it by several criteria. First, you have a topic filter. We defined 20 themes in the dropping menu that you can use and search the database. For example, I will choose women. And in several seconds, we have more than 21,000 results. If you click on the word document, you can see the document itself. It's a permanent certificate of permanent resident of Mazal Bakar. But you can also search the database by font or collection. I will choose the oldest Zemun Magistrate, the oldest collection in our archives. And we have 939 results. This is the document. Or if you want to see the oldest one from the 18th century, for example, why was Raphael Salomon fined? It's written in old German Gothic letters, but you have an analytical description to see what the document is about. You can search it by profession. It's also in the dropping menu. Lawyer, for example. If I choose lawyer, we have 94 lawyers in this database. Or you can search it from year, if you want to see what documents were created in 1910, or from 1910 to 1920. You can search it by a name if you know what specific name you're looking for. But I think that the most interesting search is find by term, because there you can type in any word that crosses your mind. For example, party, and there are several documents, 16. For example, Ladies Board of the Jewish Sephardic Community organized a charity party, and this is a document that they are registering the event in the police. Or you can type in America. Let's see if we have something about America, and we have only 5 records. For example, Estira Altarac wanted to go to South America, so she requested a certificate for the journey. Just to say one more sentence, I will not be long. You can use this database as you wish. We offer you free documents. You can use it in your personal research, in your professional research. You can use it in your paper, but please, we ask all our researchers, please quote the code reference and write down that the document is preserved in the historical archives of Belgrade. You don't have to be registered, just mention where the document is preserved. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tijana. Wonderful presentation and wonderful work.
Thank you.
We will pass to the presentation from the director of the Jewish Historical Museum in Belgrade, Vojislava Radovanović. She's unable to be with us today, so she has sent us presentation, a recorded presentation. Vojislava has been the director of the museum since 2006, and she, in her introduction, she says that this is the only such museum of this type in Serbia and ex-Yugoslavia. So let's now, so Michelle, now we.
I'm here if you need.
Yes. Okay, so here, bear with us for a moment. It's a different kind of presentations that I have to do here.
And just make sure you shared the sound.
Oh, yeah, I didn't do that. So
Okay, so just end.
Yes. Okay, so share. Sound, okay.
Jewish Historical Museum in Belgrade is in the scope of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Serbia. Museum was founded in 1948, meaning it has a long tradition, and it is the only of the kind in our country, what make us, the museum professionals, very proud. Although it is not big, our museum has the comprehensive and, no matter the age, still very attractive permanent display which represents the history, customs and culture of Jews from Serbia as well as from all parts of ex-Yugoslavia. Where various groups of visitors are coming to our museum, like students, scholars, journalists, artists, etc., etc. I mean, all kind of tourists are coming to our museum from our country and from abroad, actually from the whole world. We had groups from America, from South America, Brazil, Argentina, from all countries of Europe, from Russia, from Northern Africa, and also Middle East, from Israel, of course. The Belgrade Jewish Historical Museum comprehends and deals with 2 main contents: museum's collections and archives. The museum's collections are divided into several main parts: art collection, drawings, sculptures, paintings, etc., which is pretty big collection. Also then Judaica collection, which is a very special combination of both ethnological and applied art collection. So we have synagogue ritual objects, home festives ritual objects, marriage contracts, ketubot, amulets, costume and fabrics, and bijouterie and also domestic objects for everyday use from the Jewish families. The important thing, I think, is to say that all our objects are original and they were coming from many different countries, not only from our country. So we have objects from Austro-Hungary from 18th century and 19th century. We have objects from Middle East, etc., etc. So and all of them are originals. Then we have old and rare book collection. We have a small collection of Torah scrolls, we have religious books, praying books, etc. Then we have historical collection that includes Holocaust collection, yellow ribbons and badges from the Second World War, also personal things that was found in the mass graves at the end or after the Second World War and liberation of our country. Then things from the death camps and also we have war medals and memorial badges. And because many Jews were recognized as heroes after the Second World War. And we have a not big but significant collection of Jewish partisans' weapons and battle equipment. Finally, we have a small collection of archaeological objects. The other part of our museum is archive. The museum's archive contains fragmentary but diverse material, so it is very useful for many researchers who are coming to our museum. In general, our archives could be divided in three main sections: life and activities of ex-Yugoslav Jewish communities before the Second World War, the Holocaust archives, and the third part is documentation referred to the activities of Jewish communities and the Federation itself after the Second World War. At the end, our museum has the library of its own, but not for external use. The library of our museum contains books, so-called working copies, to be used in the museum for various studies and research. Thank you. Jewish historical.
Okay, although she's not here, we thank Vojislava for her presentation. And so now we will, it's the turn of Biljana Albahari to present on the Jewish Digital Library. Biljana graduated from the Department of Comparative Literature and Librarianship at the Faculty of Philosophy in Sarajevo, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The topic of her thesis was the Library of the Jewish Community in Sarajevo, and she has worked in multiple libraries since her graduation. Since 2016, Biljana has worked as a library consultant and bibliographer at the Bibliographical Department of the National Library of Serbia, and she's the founder and coordinator of the Jewish Digital Library, an NGO established in Belgrade in 2019, founded to collect, present, promote, and preserve the general Jewish, religious, and world heritage. She has completed the training for archivists and librarians in Yad Vashem in 2017, and she has received awards both from the Federation of Jewish Communities of Serbia, as well as the 2022 State Award of Israel Yitzhak Navon, Ladino Knight, for extraordinary contribution to the preservation, dissemination of, and scholarship on Yugoslavian Jewish heritage. So Biljana.
Thank you. Can you see me?
Yes.
I share my screen. That's okay. Do you see me? Yeah.
We see your screen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening for everyone. I'm glad that we meet today and talk about Jewish collections in Serbia, and that is because that is the first time about this topic in this area, I think. I would like, or in the beginning, to mention a few important things or historical facts about Jews in the Balkan, and explain the reason why we start to developing this library. Just a minute. First of all, we know that small Jewish communities in the Balkan existed during the Roman Empire, and the first time when they were mentioned in Serbia was in 9th century. At the end of the 15th century, after the expulsion of Jews from Spain and Portugal, these communities became more numerous, and many Jews came to the lands that were under the Ottoman Empire, such as Serbia and neighboring countries at the time. Even after liberation from the Ottomans, Balkan had still a complex and rough history, and many rebellions, uprisings, 2 world wars, and millions of victims. But Jewish communities survived all these happenings, and even in periods of peace, especially between 2 world wars, they developed and prospered in cultural, intellectual, social, even and political life. They managed to integrate and become a notable part of Serbian and Yugoslav society, but also keep their Jewish identity. Unfortunately, Yugoslav Jews, such as many European, almost completely perished in the Holocaust. But those who survived, their families, friends, members of Jewish communities, and especially researchers, tried to preserve existing heritage and find that which is not completely destroyed in the Holocaust. Because of that, it's very important to find and collect as many as possible sources in this area. And the fact that over 1,000 books and several thousand articles about Jews and Judaism have been printed in Serbia, in Serbian, Croatian, Slovenian languages shows the value of this heritage. It's also important to say that from the end of the 19th century until today, 76 journals, Jewish titles, if you want, have been published just in Serbia. And now we in the process of digitization of these magazines in National Library of Serbia. Before describing this repository, I would like to underline that in former Yugoslavia, we don't any official Jewish library. We only have a few small reference libraries within Jewish communities, which don't have online catalogs and digitized materials. Yeah, I'm talking about this moment, but in the future, I think that we have. Only one, I would say the main ex-Yugoslav library exists in the building of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Serbia, but now it's closed to users. This is the reason why GDL, Jewish Digital Library, is so important and why we try to collect and make this heritage more visible. Our work on collecting material started as part of the project of the Federation of Jewish Communities of Serbia related to Holocaust, and in cooperation with the Computer Center of the University of Belgrade, which maintains this repository. This center modified DSpace software or DSpace platform and developed a number of tools for managing, accessing, preserving, sharing data, and decreasing visibility. Because of that, our repository is organized like other Serbian academic repositories with all necessary elements from data processing to internet visibility. And as you can see on this slide, we try to make a unique and large database with open access and visible and available digital content related to Jewish heritage in Serbia and Serbian and similar languages. A special advantage of this repository is collecting and depositing different types of materials, from books to audio and video records. Also, we can deposit different types of files, but we suggest open and sustainable formats. And we established connections and cooperation with Jewish organizations, state and scientific institutions, researchers dealing with Jewish heritage, libraries, archives, and museums, and especially with international aggregators that take metadata from the Jewish Digital Library. And here is the title screen of our repository. I think that I not enough time to show you live, but we maybe after discussion we will see a live repository. I would like to say that a few words about how repository works and about.
Sorry, Biljana, if you want to show a little bit, if you want to show it live, you can. You have 1-2 minutes, because
I think maybe on the end of my presentation,
no problem.
I show you. And this is a title screen of this repository, and there is options and navigations. And for simple use of repository, you can choose options for language selections, for registration, for user manual, or for recently added items. It is new, not by year of publication, but is depositing time and search of fields. Also, for easier search and use of the repository, we organized into 16 topics with subtopics, and in these topics, documents put together because they are similar. And most topics are divided into subtopics under common title, such as publications that are published periodically, or for example, journals or proceedings. And topics and subtopics can also be divided into collections related to similar documents, or each volume or each issue. Today, we don't have enough time to describe each topic, but here are a few illustrations. Within the collection of Jewish magazines and newspapers, for example, we can see Jewish studies. It's all zbornik Jevrijskog historijskog muzeja, published by Jewish Historical Museum. And these studies can be searched by every volume, issue, or every article. One specific topic is dedicated to memories of members of Jewish communities, such as personal stories and books of Holocaust survivor, like story or book of Mr. Alexander Eisenberg. And also one collection includes educational materials, which are created by several non-governmental organizations like Haver, Serbia, Terraforming, etc. And also, just a minute. Here I must point that special benefit of this repository is related to scientific community. It means that researchers can get many books, articles, and documents faster and easier, but also researchers dealing with Jewish topics can deposit their papers or books in many times from draft to published version. It is very, very nice, I think. In this slide, you can see an article. It is academic article from collection of papers, and that is in open access and can be downloaded freely. Item has project name and project code, has ORCID identifier, and some other personal profiles. And few words about searching options. Full repository can be searched by topic by typing a specific, like in Tijana repository. You can type a specific word, or choose some of keywords, or choose topics, authors, titles, etc. And the same searching is possible through the topics by authors, titles, and keywords. And I would like to say something about access. Each item in the repository contains files and metadata describing them. Deposited files are publicly available, except those restricted by contract, copyright, or embargo period. Metadata is freely accessible to all and freely reusable by all under appropriate licenses. This is one slide about views, and you can see that we have a simple or basic view and full metadata view. Simple views is suitable for users, and full item view is suitable with doubling core standards, doubling core meta standards is preferable for librarians and admins. And both views show basic bibliographic information about items. And if someone wants to deposit material in JDL, it is necessary to fill out consent form. This option is always on the bottom of the screen. This person have to choose one of the licenses, attach file, and send it by email to admin. And something about repository visibility: we achieve visibility on the internet by connecting and sharing data with various databases and platforms, which you can see on this slide. And also, I like this slide and these pictures. We participate in various conferences, workshops, and presentations. For example, last 15 years, Center for the Study of Jewish Art and Culture at the Faculty of Philosophy in Belgrade leads international workshop Jewish Art and Tradition. And since our repository was established, it became one of the main sources for professors and students. And till today, this is our results. Till today, we have scanned over 78,000 pages. All texts are processed in Fine Reader software and OCR. We created over 2,200 items from different time of periods. All digital objects are formatted and set with thumbnails. For all books and articles, we made abstracts and keywords in Serbian and English. And most important, all documents are visible and available to all. And the final slide, our team has only 3 members. You can see our names on this slide. We are developing this database for just 3 years. We are the only such library in this area, and because of that, we are making huge work to develop this library and include material from ex-Yugoslav republics. And our repository you can find on this address. And thank you for your attention. And I try to stop this share and I'm share. If I have time.
Now, not really, Biljana. Let's pass in Olga, and later on, if there is time.
Okay.
Thank you. But thank you very much and thank you for the amazing work that you do.
Thank you.
And so our last presentation today is by Olga Ungar. Olga graduated from the Academy of Arts of Novi Sad, Serbia, and continued to pursue higher education at the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in Jerusalem, where she earned the MFA degree, and she has completed also a Ph.D. degree in 2016 at the Program for Contemporary Jewelry in Bar-Ilan University, with a dissertation concentrating on Hungarian Jewish sculptor Michael Kara as a doorway to the historical analysis of Hungarian-speaking East Central European Jewish communities. Her current research projects examine the Holocaust memorials and Jewish material heritage of Vojvodina, an autonomous province in northern Serbia. She is the founder of Tikun, an NGO established in Novi Sad in 2018, dedicated to preserving Vojvodina Jewish heritage and promoting culture, art, and scholarly research. Olga.
Thank you very much, Amalia. I'll share my screen. Okay. So thank you very much, Amalia. And today I will present to you my project, Vojvodina Holocaust Memorials. That basically, it's a little bit different process. So I had the research in my mind, and then findings of this research became a digital database. So the project began in 2018, and it includes family and community monuments in Jewish cemeteries, monuments at the sites of destroyed former or present-day Jewish community-owned assets, and memorials in public spaces. Public memorials were selected based on the criteria whether they convey a message of commemoration of Jewish victims, either by listing their names, their number, or referring to a particular historical event that had affected the local community. In addition, the project analyzes the commemorative practices developed by Jewish communities as well as by local and state authorities, and discusses the role of the memorials in the formation of cultural memory, collective memory, and the identity of certain cities. The website is bilingual, Serbian and English, and if you click on the project bar, there's a text that briefly explains the rationale behind the project. In the location bar that you can see on the left-hand side, there is a list of all the places in which memorials can be found. And in addition, one can search for a particular place by typing its name in the search bar. On this page, there is also some basic information about the history of the local Jewish communities. On the right-hand side, there are two tabs, memorials and details. Memorials to open a window for details and images of memorials in this particular place, and details which brings bibliography and, for example, additional names of places in Hungarian and in German. So to illustrate the project to you today, I'll present some of the findings in regard to commemoration patterns that were developed by local Jewish communities and on the sites of destroyed Jewish property. So the earliest commemorative practices were developed by the survivors who had the need to honor the memory of the family members who perished. So in most cases, they inscribed names of the victims on already existing family graves. And there are hundreds of such examples of such graves. So I'll present to you just a few patterns utilized on those. So some of them tended to follow a Yugoslav era narrative of grouping together all the victims as disappeared in the war or victims of fascism, while only later monuments refer to the perished as the Holocaust victims. Some of them also state died as martyrs and or list the names of the camps in which their loved ones were murdered. So what patterns of commemoration did the communities adopt? For the most part, the initiative to create memorials came from the local Jewish communities and in some cases from the Federation of Jewish Communities of Yugoslavia. So in Vojvodina, there is the total of 19 such memorials. During the project, I noticed differences in commemoration patterns between predominantly Orthodox and predominantly Neo-Law communities, and now I will point some of them out. The majority of Orthodox community monuments have the form of a memorial wall bearing the names of the victims with little to no ornate features except from occasionally Magen David. They almost exclusively have inscriptions in Hebrew. The inscriptions we encounter are a modified version of a verse from the Ava Rachamim, Father of Mercy, and a verse from the Avinu Malkeinu, Our Father, Our King prayers. While the first prayer is on the ability to die al Kiddush Hashem, the second is asking God for mercy and forgiveness. However, this particular verse that you can see on the slide turns our thoughts to utter evil and requires payment for murder or unjust death. Another characteristic of the inscriptions to Orthodox community is that they separately commemorate their rabbis, stressing the importance of spiritual leadership. Neo-Law communities prompted less hermetic design. This was reflected in the appearance of the five-pointed star in Zrenjanin and Bačka Palanka, as well as in the official classification of victims as victims of the occupation forces and victims of fascism. Additionally, the inscriptions sometimes separately honor fallen Jewish fighters, as in Bačka Palanka, and progressive thinkers, as in Subotica. Even more so, the memorial in Zrenjanin features the well-known slogan uttered by the Yugoslav resistance movement, "Death to fascism, freedom to the people." So naturally, this distinction between the Orthodox and Neo-Law community is not always clear. In Subotica, for example, which had a sizable Orthodox population, above the Serbo-Croatian inscription honoring progressive thinkers is an inscription in Hebrew that reads, "To martyrs who fell as a burnt offering on the altar of their religion and nationality, evoking burning bodies of the 10 martyrs murdered by the Romans for disobeying the prohibition of learning the Torah." The Jewish imperative to die on the altar of faith also appears in Sombor. The inscription that reads, "From elderly to innocent infants, as victims suffered on the altar of their faith and nationality in the years of World War II, without comparison for its vandalism and misery in the history of Israel," emphasizes the extent of suffering and how the Holocaust is unparalleled and unprecedented. A unique inscription can be found in Zemun. "Remember what Amalek did to you," placing the perpetrator within the meta-historical archetype of Amalek, the internal enemy of the Jewish people. Moreover, by incorporating symbols typically found in Jewish funeral architecture, Magen David, Ner Tamid, and Torah scroll, these monuments preserve Jewish identity and tradition. 7 existing Vojvodina Jewish communities commemorate their dead at these memorials in theirs and also often in neighboring towns with no Jewish communities, either marking the anniversaries of deportations and or International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Nevertheless, some of these memorials has been forgotten. Now I will present several sites of memory at the sites of demolished Jewish property. Part of the memorials to the victims stand on the sites of destroyed Jewish cemeteries. During the Yugoslav era, some 10 Jewish cemeteries were exhumed and remains were transferred to common graves that also commemorate the Holocaust victims. In regard to demolished synagogues, out of 82 original synagogue buildings, only 17 exist today. Only 2 in Subotica and Novi Sad have preserved exteriors and interiors. Others are used as residential or industrial buildings or stand abandoned. So most synagogue buildings were demolished after World War II, more precisely in the period between 1947 and 1951, but some as late as the 1980s. Mounting of memorial plaques to commemorate destroyed synagogue was quite rare in the Yugoslav era. However, from the 1990s onwards, a handful of memorial plaques were installed at these sites, mostly by local authorities and in some cases by local Jewish communities or the Federation of Jewish Communities of Serbia. Frequently, the commemorative inscriptions state that there was a Jewish community and or a synagogue, as we can see on the plaques on the left-hand side, while the plaque on the right-hand side in Zrenjanin, even though from the late 1990s, adheres to the previous narrative of Jewish victimhood as part of the Yugoslav liberation struggle. Thus, the terminology used on these plaques has only partially changed, and the word Holocaust appears only on the memorial in Bačka Palanka, probably since the initiative for its erection came from Israel, more precisely from a daughter of the community's last cantor. The inscription on the plaque commemorates the synagogue and the tragic death of the majority of the Bačka Palanka Jews in the Holocaust, but it also mentions 37 Jews who survived the war and immigrated to Israel. Similar to the memorials in Jewish cemeteries, the commemoration ceremonies are held by some of these plaques at the sites of the demolished synagogues, either on January 27th or on the anniversary of the deportations. I'll conclude now. By adding the names of the victims to pre-war family monuments in Jewish cemeteries, the survivors tended to, in a symbolic way, preserve the memory of the loved ones who perished, to preserve the memory in the family circle. So these private or family monuments tend to follow the official patterns of remembrance, commemorating the victims as victims of fascism, and the term Holocaust began to sporadically appear only in the 2000s. Memorials in Jewish cemeteries by featuring inscriptions in Hebrew and in local languages, Serbo-Croatian and Hungarian, as well as by using communist and Jewish symbols, simultaneously convey 2 different cultural contexts. One compatible with the reigning ideological mode of commemorating World War II, and one more elusive and accessible only to those familiar with Jewish culture and tradition. The reasons why local authorities in the 90s began to set up memorial plaques on the sites of demolished Jewish property is not entirely comprehensible, since clearly the Holocaust has not become part of the public historical discourse. Some of the memorials have been in alarming condition. There is a persistent argument between Jewish leaders and municipal authorities about whose responsibility it is to preserve this aspect of heritage, because the few remaining Jewish communities lack the funds and capacity to upkeep these memorials and Jewish cemeteries. The recognition of the cultural memory of the Holocaust in Vojvodina is thus of utmost importance, as the Jewish community size has been steadily declining. As for the memorials in public spaces, which I have not touched upon in this short presentations, but you can see them on the website, except for a few isolated cases, they do not explicitly pay tribute to the Jewish victims of World War II. The specificity of the Jewish fate in the Holocaust, or the fact that they were the victims of planned, systematic, and total destruction, has not yet been fully recognized. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olga, for this wonderful presentation. And thanks again to all the presenters. And I will open now the floor for discussion. I'm sure that there are many questions. I know that I have many, many questions. So because we cannot see you all, please raise your Zoom hand for questions. Or if you prefer to write in the chat, that's also possible. Stephanie.
Hi, I very much enjoyed both sessions. I'm sorry I could only come in a little late. The Yeshiva University has an institutional repository named Yair, Y-A-I-R, and we are also hosted on DSpace. I was very interested in some of the badges or indications you had under the short, I guess you call it landing page of each document. You had, for example, the open padlock. You had some sort of a vertical bar with the Creative Commons. Could you just repeat, please, Biljana, which badges you have and why do you have them? What are their uses? Do you understand my question? Good, thank you.
Yes, I understand. Can you hear me? Yeah. I'm earlier working in the Institute of Social Sciences, and I worked with scientific researchers, and we have a lot of work with the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Science, because they want to know what our research is doing, where they publish their works, and how they evaluate these works. Now with us is Maya Vasiljević. She's a scientific researcher, and she knows everything about evaluation of scientific work. In our repositories, repository of Jewish Digital Library is thematic repository, but it is based on the scientific repository. And in repository, we have ORCID identification, which can connect with researchers' bibliographies, and you can connect metadata from GDL repository to the ORCID or some reference manager. Also, we have Web of Science identification, Scopus identifications, all identification which are preferable for our ministry, for our researchers. Maya, if I explain well, I don't know. It is my explanation, because these connections is very, very important for our researchers, and researchers who are research Jewish heritage have no institution, and because of that, our repository is very, very valuable for them. Because they can put their work in our repository, they can badge Web of Science, ORCID, or something else, and automatically they can be visible in these databases. It is good explanation.
I think so. I kind of caught on to that the Jewish researchers were piggybacking onto the scientific repository, and that gives a good explanation as to why you have the ORCID ID, which we have, but we didn't have the open padlock or the CC. What we do have are two other badges, one called Altmetrics, that kind of is more geared towards social media like Twitter feeds with the impact, and the other is called Dimensions, and that displays as a larger colorful badge, and if you hover over it you get citations, most recent citations, etc. It's very, very interesting. And we just added the Dimensions badge this past week. You have to have a DOI. You might want to look into either. I like it because it's sort of a reward, an acknowledgement, and calls attention to those articles that are getting a lot of readership.
Yes, we also have Dimensions and Altmetric, but it's not in our repository, but because our researchers in our repository have no, I don't know, have no these pages in my repository, but it could be. It is good, and I think that in the next time, in the next few years or half year, we have in our repository also this this possibility to have this identification.
Well, as a university, of course, we have tenure track faculty, so young adjuncts who are trying to make their mark. So it's important to them to have those things. And we certainly have STEM as well as Holocaust studies, as well as Jewish history, philosophy, etc. Thank
you.
Maya, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question for Tijana. What you showed to us, the project that you did over 3 years to collect into, the Jewish material that you have in the archives in Belgrade. It sounds, being an archivist, I can imagine what a huge project that was. And yes. Can you tell us how many people were on your team, or if you had to hire extra people, or if you did it in the archives? Can you tell us a little bit?
No, we did it in the archives. We had about 15 people, but not all archivists. We had technical support for scanning. We had 2 IT experts who created the base, but they are employed in our archives, so we didn't have staff hired from the outside. It was a project that we worked during our working hours, after working hours, and every Saturday. So it was a really huge job.
There's a question in the chat, one about adding OCR to the documents that are accessible, so whether they'll be readable, machine readable, and then also about adding languages spoken by the different communities, like of the regions in Serbia, like Romanian, Hungarian, and Turkish. And the asker recognizes that it's a question of long-term planning. But if there are any other
planning, next step that we want to do is to make a database of the names, because the names that we use in our database, even in English, we use the Serbian transcription. So if you are searching for Cohen, you cannot find it if you put the letter H. So for someone who is not Serbian, it will be difficult to find the Cohen. So now that's the next step. We want to make names, this register of names that everyone can find. Cohen, Kohn.
And there also, I can jump in on that. There's I know that Wikidata has a very robust community of users in the Jewish studies area, specifically around Jewish names. And so it might be worth looking into to see if there are, if that's a place to sort of place these names.
Yes, I was in Yad Vashem a few years ago with Biljana, and they have this register. That's what we want to make, is they made their database. They have all variations of name in all the regions in, let's say, this Southeastern Europe. That's our next step.
Okay.
Maybe someday OCR and other languages.
It takes a lot of time.
Yes.
I see Stephanie and then Biljana.
We use a few software programs in order to OCR optical character recognition. The first obviously is Adobe, but we also recently, maybe about 3 years ago, got the ABBY, ABBYY Fine Reader, and that does Hebrew. So just interested in knowing whether or not you knew about that, the ABBY, because it is very helpful. It's not perfect. It doesn't do Tenuot, it doesn't do Rashi, it doesn't do a lot of scripts, but it's a start, and it is a bit expensive.
Well, me personally, I haven't heard about it, but we do have IT department which is familiar with these programs. We have one OCR program. We bought one, but for now, it is a job that we cannot do. We hope that in next 5, 6, 7 years, we will be able to do more.
Go ahead, Biljana.
Okay, yeah, we use AB5 Reader and we OCR our documents. A little problems we have with Hebrew. It is not ideal, but we do that. Especially Serbian, Cyrillic letters and Latin letters, and all our documents are OCR'd. And maybe there are some mistakes because some of those documents, some of those books are very, very old, and it is problem because of the paper, of the letters, Latin letters, Gothic letters, etc. But it's work, and we register to this their sites, and we use OCR, and we also try to make as many as possible keywords on Serbian and English, especially on English, and if there's some book or article on the other language, we try to put these words on this language. And I think that is because we have abstracts, because we have keywords, and because we have OCR documents, it is much more possible to find something. And about the names, I remember that in Yad Vashem explained that, for example, for the name Aaron have about 100 similar, how to say, version to say this name. It is unimaginable, because 100 versions for the first name. It's just one comment. Thank you.
I have a quick question for if nobody else is doing something. I see Constance very quickly. Olga, I have a question about the memorials. Do you, I haven't looked at your website, do you also have the names of the memorials? I mean, if there are names of people written in the memorials, is the website searchable by names, or is it a future project? Is that a future project?
Yeah, that's basically an excellent question. I didn't go into this, but Yad Vashem, for example, there are several memorials that I presented today that Yad Vashem really has the lists of all the people who perished, who are inscribed, whose names are inscribed on this memorial. Yeah. I don't, but it's a very important source really in, you know, collecting all the names of all the victims. It's a very important source for, identification.
Thank you, Constance.
I have also, thank you so much, everyone, for the great presentations. I have a question for Olga, and sorry if it's ignorant. I just wanted to ask the Neolog communities who erected these monuments, they were mostly Hungarian speaking, right? But
Yes.
they couldn't use Hungarian on the monuments after 1945. Did I get this right, or?
So in my conclusion, I mentioned that they used both local languages, Serbo-Croatian and Hungarian.
Okay, thank you.
They used Hungarian, I think, but you're right. You've noticed it correctly that they more use Serbo-Croatian, and I think it's their decision, because a large part of the Vojvodina region was occupied by Hungary in World War II. And yeah, I think for those survivors, I mean, everyone's native language, mother tongue was Hungarian, but it was a conscious decision not to commemorate using Hungarian language.
So it was not,
yeah, so it does appear, but much less than Serbo-Croatian.
Thank you so much. So interesting. Thank you.
Welcome.
So we are past the hour mark, and I would like to ask if there are more questions. Otherwise, we will circulate probably Tijana, Biljana, and Olga. We can circulate your emails in case people want to get into contact with you.
Yeah, sure, gladly.
Wonderful.
Of course.
So thank you very, very much for this really fascinating presentations and all the work that you do. Really stunning work. And thank you for your time in presenting to us. And thanks to everyone who attended today's event, and looking forward to seeing you at the conference and at a future event.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you all.
invitation.
Thank you. Bye.